Welcome to the Plant-Based Curious podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about budget-friendly and healthy dinner ideas using frozen vegetables. Joining us today is the Plant-Powered Dietitian, Sharon Palmer, who is a registered dietitian, author, speaker, and media expert in plant-based nutrition and sustainability. She has authored several books, including The Plant-Powered Diet, Plant-Powered for Life, and her latest book, California Vegan. Sharon will share her expertise on how to use frozen vegetables to create delicious, healthy, and affordable meals. Welcome, Sharon Palmer. I'm just so excited to see you. I'm such a troll on your Instagram.
I follow you too, and it's nice to be here. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Sharon, can you talk about what inspired you to focus on plant-based nutrition and sustainability as a career?
Yes, well, I'm a registered dietitian, and I was raised in a kind of a vegetarian home. My parents, for religious and moral reasons, tried to raise our family vegetarian. We were almost vegetarian, and my parents were both farmers too. Although I
Hmm.
was raised in the suburbs, but they were raised on farms, so we had this connection. We grew our own food, and my mom canned, and so all of
Oh.
this stuff really influenced me to learn about the power of healthy food. And I went to school at Loma Linda University, which is a plant-based campus. I
Well, that is just absolutely awesome. So, how can frozen vegetables be used to create budget-friendly, healthy meals? I mean, everybody says you have to have fresh food.
I love that you're talking about this because there's nothing wrong with frozen. I think people think that frozen is processed in some way, but I've actually been on farm tours where they actually freeze fruits and vegetables. And in some ways, they're even better because they let them go fully to harvest, to maturity. And
Wow.
in our modern food system, they're picking fruits and vegetables at least 1 week early to make it to supermarket. So they have that shelf life. Whereas frozen, they're waiting till they get all the way ripe. They're harvesting it and they're immediately flash frozen. So, they're high quality, they're packed with nutrients, and they're at their mature peak.
Oh, wow. So, what are some of the benefits of using frozen over fresh?
Well, for one thing, they're always available. So like right now we are in the just starting spring, so we're in the cooler months and we don't have all of the produce available to us yet. So we can rely on frozen because it's in season right now. I mean, it's because it's been harvested and frozen and we can keep it in our freezers. So that's nice. You have a bigger availability. And another thing that's really nice is that you don't have to do anything to it. It's like you open the bag and dump. If you're working with fresh, you have to peel sometimes. You have to chop, you have to dice, shred. This is already prepared. Just open the bag and dump. So, you can really save time.
And this is so awesome to hear because the main thing I hear from people is it's so expensive to eat plant-based. But when you go in the grocery store, you can literally buy organic frozen vegetables for under $3 sometimes.
Yes. And that's another great point is you can save a ton of money.
You can save a ton of money. And if it's not fresh, you don't have to throw it away. You can freeze it. So I'm so happy that you're here, giving people some reality on frozen vegetables.
Yes.
So how can we be sure, or people that are listening, that we're getting enough nutrients in with the frozen vegetables?
Well, as I was mentioning, you can feel confident because of the way produce is frozen in America. The distribution centers are really close to the farms. I live in California, where a lot of this is done. A lot of the frozen vegetables, the crops are being grown in California, and they're actually harvested and taken really quickly to where they're frozen and packaged. So that means there's this short transit time between harvest and freezing, so that preserves nutrients. And actually, the freezing process doesn't destroy that many nutrients. I mean, you do lose a little bit of some of the more perishable vitamins, but you still have a lot in there. So you can feel good about that.
It's just so great that you're saying that. I used to order food from California that was flash frozen from a company called Vistro. And I felt and read that the nutrients were there, and I'm so happy that you're reconfirming that. But it was just so nice to get flash frozen, and I could unpack it and eat it whenever I was ready to eat my food. So that's so good you're saying that.
I
So,
know Bistro, and I visited
oh,
their
did you?
I love their food. They make homemade batch cooking. It's so good.
It's so good. I mean, it's probably 6 or 7 years I've been,
Yeah.
and I will order Vistro to when I was traveling a lot before COVID. I stopped worrying about whether I would find food that I could eat that was plant-based and healthy. I would literally take my Vistro food in my suitcase to wherever I was working. So having frozen food is pretty good because it could be in your suitcase, or it could be in your fridge for days or for hours, and it would still be fresh. So you're reminding me of that experience, which is so awesome. So what are some misconceptions that people might have about frozen vegetables?
I think there's this misperception that they're really highly processed. I mentioned this before. I think people think there are things added to them. Like there's like preservatives, but which is
Yes.
not true. If you read the bag, it's the vegetables. That's it. Not even water, not even salt. It's vegetables. So if you read any kind of food label, if you read the ingredients list, it has to include all the ingredients on there, and it's listed in order by weight. So if you read the ingredients and all it says is vegetables, that's just shows you that it's only vegetables. Now there are a few cases where that you can buy vegetables that are seasoned or have some kind of sauce, and that's on the label. But I think this idea that they have preservatives, I hear this from people, but the freezing is the preservative. Our ancestors had to figure out a way to preserve food to last through the winters, so freezing has been around. I mean, it was canning, freezing, drying, and this allows us to have healthy food all year round.
I think for listeners, people that haven't quite moved into plant-based, we know when you read the ingredients of processed food, there's a lot of ingredients. So I think that mental conditioning really moves into plant-based when you initially start. And it's so good you made a point on the ingredients, because that's what I tell people all the time. Read your ingredients. Make sure that you read. And if you see more than one ingredient, then you need to, I'm not going to tell you to eat it or not, but you need to Google, you need to understand what you're eating. So I'm just happy that you're telling us that it's just one ingredient. I eat frozen vegetables as well, especially when I'm really, really busy and I can't get out, or because I won't cook, the fresh vegetables, and then I have to throw them away because they were older. If I was smart, I would cook as soon as I got the vegetables, but I don't always do that. So it's nice to know that I can just use the frozen vegetables. So
Yeah.
what type of quick, simple meals, Sharon, can we prepare with frozen vegetables that won't take a lot of time at all? Because that's another thing. People think if I'm using vegetables, it's going to take me not only a long time to figure out something to cook, but I want to eat more than frozen broccoli. That's what people say to
Yeah.
me.
Yes. Yeah, I get that, but if you kind of think of frozen vegetables as the equivalent of fresh, so if you're seeing a recipe that calls for like broccoli, that's a great example, like a broccoli stir fry, you can take out that bag of broccoli that's already trimmed, already chopped, and use it in that recipe. But you can also, I like to keep mixed vegetables because those are already blended. So you can buy all those mixed vegetable blends and example stir fry. I mean, then you have all of that. I mean, that is the easiest meal just throw in a bag of frozen vegetables, maybe some tofu, a little soy sauce, maybe some garlic and ginger, and serve it with brown rice. And you've got a meal in no time, really. So, and other thing, I love to also make shepherd's pie. I don't know if you
Oh, I love shepherd's
yeah.
pie.
So, it's just you can take a bag of mixed frozen vegetables and make kind of a gravy type sauce with it. And again, put some plant protein. It could be beans or tofu or tempeh. And then I like to top mine with mashed potatoes. So that's a super easy meal with frozen vegetables that way too.
So, someone that's listening today that's saying, I'm listening to Sharon, tomorrow I'm going to go to the grocery store and get some frozen vegetables just to make meals. What type of shopping preparation would you tell them to do? Is it based on meal planning, or what would you tell them to do?
Well, what I like to do is I keep my favorite frozen vegetables in the freezer at all times. So when I go shopping, I kind of do a little inventory, nothing formal, just 5 minutes. I look in my freezer and I see, okay, what am I low on? Because I always like to keep frozen corn, frozen peas. Those are two that I use all the time. And then I like frozen edamame. That's a good protein source. I like these frozen vegetable blends. So if I keep those on hand, then I can turn to them any time of the week. So that's my strategy is I make sure, because they last quite a while in your freezer. So, you can just have them and then you can mix them with other foods that you have in your pantry or your refrigerator to make a balanced meal.
Well, thank you for really sharing these frozen vegetable ideas, because I know lots of people really want to change, but they just don't want to have to jump through a whole lot of hoops to be
Yeah.
plant-based. And I'm sure you hear this too.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give the listeners who are still on the fence about even being plant-based?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point because there are two things you mentioned. The things that I hear that are barriers that are those stumbling blocks where people just can't quite go over, they're thinking about doing plant-based, but they can't quite make it. One is they think it's going to be a lot of time, like we just talked about. And the other is money. I mean, there are other reasons too, but those are two big reasons. So you brought those up, and I think one of the biggest things I try to educate people about is it can be really easy, like these frozen vegetables. Like I can get dinner on the table almost any night of the week in 30 minutes, a healthy, balanced meal. And because I'm busy too, I don't have hours and hours to cook. I like to cook more on the weekends when I have more time. I like to do my fun cooking where it might take a little bit extra time, but I'm busy during the week like we all are. And you don't have to make fancy meals that you spend hours like chopping and grating and with, hundreds of unusual ingredients. They can be simple, easy ingredients. And actually, you can save money on a plant-based diet. Research has shown that because it's the animal protein that's typically the most expensive thing on the plate. And beans are such a lower cost protein source. Tofu is very moderately priced. Peanut butter, all these things are so moderately priced. And if you're careful with the other things like vegetables, what we're talking about, vegetables can seem expensive, but if they're out of season, of course they're going to cost because they've been flown in from another country. They're going to cost more. So frozen is a great way to save money. And you can save money on a plant-based diet if you just use a few of these skills.
Use the skills that you're sharing with us today, because it's also about mindset and being open. As I said, it's a lot of the mindset and conditioning that people have when they move into plant-based eating. So what I would say is just having an open mind about what you're sharing with us today and giving it a try, just giving
Yeah.
it a try to see. And people also think seasoning, if I have frozen food, then that means it's going to be bland, so how do you spice up your frozen foods? frozen
Yeah,
vegetables,
that's a
Sharon.
good point too. A lot of people think plant-based eating is going to be bland or boring, but it is so delicious. I mean, if you just go to an Indian restaurant, I'm
Oh,
obsessed with Indian food. There's tons of plant-based food in that culture, and it's nothing but delicious. I mean, it is not bland at all. So many foods from around the world are plant-based, and these dishes are very flavorful, and it's about spices and herbs and color and texture, crunch, and all of these things going
oh,
on that we get from plant-based foods. Whether, that crunchy whole grain that you're serving that stir fry with, adding a little ginger, sesame seeds, stirring in peanut butter and a Thai sauce, all those curry spices in a stew, even like Cajun spices and black-eyed peas. My mom used to always love to make black-eyed peas with cornbread, and her black-eyed peas were so good. They were just really savory, and she used just a few spices. So really, that can elevate and make it so delicious.
and one thing I can share, when I started eating more plant-based foods, I really felt that I was tasting my food for the first time. And
Yeah.
I say that because a lot of the foods that we eat are seasoned with salt and pepper. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So salt is the seasoning that we all grew up with, for the most
Yes.
part. Many of us, I'll say many of us. So eating plant-based, whether it's frozen or fresh, I would feel like, oh my goodness, this is so good. I'm experiencing my food for the first time. It felt like that anyway.
Yes. I know. I love what you say. I tell people that all the time is to not use salt and discover the flavor of food. I mean, of course, herbs and spices can really elevate food and bring in flavor profiles, but plant-based food has so much to offer because it's so colorful. There's all these natural flavors, whether it's that pungency in kale or that deep sweet beet, with that earthy flavor, or that, crisp carrot or the snow peas, all those different flavors that come with those plant foods. Sometimes when they're overly salted, you're not really tasting that flavor come through.
And that's what I remember, just the salt and pepper and other seasonings that are in the store. So for me, just having you here to really educate us on the value of frozen vegetables is really awesome, and giving us some uh, ideas for meal planning and how we can put our favorite fresh vegetables in the freezer so we have it on hand when we're ready to use them, as well as you talked about getting dinner on the table in 30 minutes. So that's really ideal for most people. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So is there one thing you want to leave the listeners with as we conclude this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to tell people that you can get a healthy meal on the table in the time you could like get to your phone and order takeout and go pick it up, because that's literally the amount of time you can get a lot of healthy meals on the table, and really identifying some favorite meals. Like for me, I shared that stir fry recipe, but also one of my favorite recipes is just a simple pasta. And I just open the refrigerator, and whatever vegetables I have, I'll do a saute with garlic, and I'll saute my vegetables, maybe and put in some herbs. I always have an herb garden, but you can also use dried herbs. And then I serve it with pasta, and I can get that meal done in like 20 minutes while my stir fry is going with my sauteed vegetables. I've got my pasta cooking. So if you can find some easy tips, easy recipes that really don't need a recipe, it's just opening the door and cooking. And this is a way our parents and our grandparents used to cook. They used to open the door and, what do I have? Let's make a meal out of it. Then it can really be more approachable and not so stressful, and still delicious and healthy. So much better than what you're going to get when you try to do takeout, So, and save money too.
Save money, especially in these times. So not only are you sharing awesome meal ideas, you're really helping the listeners to save money. Saving money by buying frozen vegetables and figuring out different meal ideas. So this is really a timely episode for people to hear. Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
that is it for this episode. Sharon, I want to thank you for being here and really educating and supporting the listeners on their next venture to the grocery store. If you're listening to this episode, I want you to go out either today or tomorrow and start buying frozen foods and see what type of meals you can come up with. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.